All right, we're all set up. Oops, we almost ended our meeting. Don't do that. Okay. So we all here now? I think so, right? Yeah. We'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Education, virtual meeting of February 16th, 2021. This meeting is being recorded, although I haven't started that yet. So this meeting is being recorded and fully virtual. I just ask that all participants mute themselves to prevent any meeting interference, and that you can unmute yourself using *6. I also ask that everybody wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking so that people listening by phone are able to identify the person talking. And that brings us to our Pledge of Allegiance, and I will share a flag if I can find one. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and that will bring us to our commitment to community statement. And I believe, Mr. Voros, would you be willing to share our commitment?
Yes.
To community?
Yes. As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Thank you. All right, and now if there is no objection, I'd like to move the curriculum presentation to just after our reports. If there is no objection, we will have Mr. Hall and Dr. Longobuco share the curriculum with us after our financial report. Are there any objections? Sensing none, that is what we will do. All right, and that brings us to our consent agenda. Is there a motion for that?
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of January 19, January 21, January 26, January 28, and February 2nd, 2021, the donation to Sandy Hook School, and the correspondence report.
Second.
Very good. So Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Mr. Poussin seconds the motion. Are there any items that need to be removed? Sensing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that's unanimous, and the consent agenda is approved. And that brings us to our public participation. I don't see a whole lot of public, but I will open this period up for any public who wishes to address the board at this time. We just ask that you limit your remarks to under 3 minutes, and that you keep it to the items on the agenda for this first public participation. So is there anybody who would like to address the board at this time? Nope, sensing none, I'll close out the public participation and move on to reports, starting with the chair report. So just an update, let's see, Dr. Rodriguez, Ms. Vadas, and I presented the Board of Education budget proposal to the Board of Finance last week. And Ms. Vadas also presented our COVID expenses to this date, or to January 31st. We've also requested that all budget questions be submitted to us in writing. The Holly HVAC project will not be part of the April referendum. There's time needed to get a more precise estimate for that project, and that referendum will take place, or we're hoping, I mean, presumably the Legislative Council will put it on the November referendum. Also, the legislative breakfast, the CABE legislative breakfast took place several weeks ago with about 30 attendees. There were many topics for this legislative session that were discussed. Senator Wong attended and was there to address some of the questions. And then, let's see, we need a volunteer for our nurses negotiations, which will be coming up shortly. So a volunteer or two from our board members to participate in that important negotiation. And then finally, I know Dr. Rodriguez has been meeting with PTAs regarding budget and bringing everybody up to date on where we are in the district right now. And if there are any of our liaisons that can go to those PTA meetings with her, that would be fantastic. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions? All right, sensing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's report, Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. I just have a few things this evening. So Mark Pompano and I, our Director of Security, are again speaking at Penn State virtually this year in March next month. And it's part of the Directors Academy. And those are area, even though they're directors, they are like superintendents in all the public schools there. And we've spoken in the past on safety and security. And this year, the focus is more on the social emotional practices. And we learn just as much from them as they learn from us. So we're excited about that again. We are also working with Tony Gentile. As you know, he's part of our Executive Security Committee and has been with us since Sandy Hook from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And typically he has his interns create a research project that will be beneficial to Newtown. And this year, and we get to choose or select a topic that's timely and we feel will be beneficial. And so this year we chose bullying. So staff, students, and parents will receive a brief survey on this topic on bullying. It's anonymous and as well as just short answer, actually multiple choice. There will be no open-ended questions. And there is Dr. Longabuco and Mr. Einhorn actually sent out an opt-out for parents. So it'll be staff, parents, and students who will be taking it later this month. And we certainly will collect all of that information. And once they put it together in a report, I'll share that with you at a later date. And again, it will give us I think, a healthy picture of the perceptions of bullying in our district, which I think is important. We also have a subgroup on peak branding and communication, and they are currently reviewing the potential for a district app through Blackboard, which is a very reputable organization that will help provide hopefully a one-stop shop, as I call it, for receiving and sending communication. And this we're looking to implement in the coming school year. And it could even replace some of our current systems now. And again, we've had this actually was brought upon by, various incidents and issues that parents have had trying to navigate all of the various websites and systems of communication, things like paying for lunch in one place, and it gets kind of chaotic. So this was an approach. We've looked at 2 different apps, and we're really looking more seriously at Blackboard. So I will give you more information once we finalize our move to that particular app and the timeline as well. And finally, I just want to review, as I normally do with you, the staffing report. Starting with there were no resignations this past month. We did hire a new ELL teacher, Amiki Theodoso. We still have our open positions, and those were the 4 secondary teachers that we'd like to hire that will help us with staffing. And so putting that all together, we've hired 1 certified teacher, 3 new building subs, 6 new para educators, and 1 new clerical. And we also had 1 retirement, and that is Jill Beaudry. And while we typically speak on behalf of all of our retirees at the end of the year, typically it's in June, I wanted to speak just briefly on Jill, since our administrators have a December timeline in putting in for retirement. So just very briefly, Jill was hired for the 2004-05 school year. She started as a 0.5 gifted and talented teacher, and then went full-time the following year as a 5th grade teacher. In August of 2013, she was named acting assistant principal at Reed, and then the following year was named assistant principal. So Jill has done an excellent job and really garnered the trust of the entire staff. And I know she worked very closely with Ann and now with Dr. Correa. Again, we wish her well, and we'll do so more formally in June, along with our other retirees from all of the other union groups. But again, I couldn't miss this opportunity to celebrate Jill Beaudry and her work throughout the district. And that's all I have this evening.
Great, thank you. She was also instrumental in getting our school start time changed. She was very much a part of that whole discussion.
Absolutely.
Any other board questions or comments, Ms. Zukowski? You're muted, I think.
Yeah, Dr. Rodriguez, I was wondering if it might be possible for you to say a few words about, how well things are going for the 7 to 12 grade being full-time now. I know a couple of weeks ago, I went to a PTA meeting and they were very concerned about the drop, about the start of school, the congestion at the start of school and the pickup. How's that going?
I actually have that on my COVID update, my report on the agenda. I can speak to it now, but I have to say it is going really, really well. And again, a lot of this is anecdotal, but it also ties into our decrease in COVID cases. And I'll speak to that when we get to the agenda. I've heard from teachers, I've heard from a variety of staff. I've had climate and culture meetings, including the paras as well. And again, I have to say, it really is the vigilance of the community and our staff as to why this is going well. And I'll speak to some other issues around DPH. I was on a phone call with them this morning, and this kind of ties into your question. But right now, I think it's going really, really well. And again, we're going to hear from the students as well.
Okay, Mr. Voros, did you have a question?
Yes. Lori, would you refresh my memory on the bullying survey that the students are taking? What age group does that
Oh, yes.
involve?
Thank you, John. I should have mentioned that. It is only for 7 through 12.
All right. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, is there a reason why, like, the 4th, 5th, and 6th are not taking this survey?
Yes, we wanted to focus first on the secondary. It doesn't mean that we won't do another survey in the future. Right now, we wanted to, many of our incidents occur at the secondary level. We also have the anonymous app, so we're tying in a lot of those pieces. It doesn't mean we won't do something for the younger students later.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think it is important that we do it for the younger students. I think it's very important.
I
Thank you.
agree, John. We're just, right now, we're focusing on the secondary.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Do they also do the school climate surveys sometime later in the year? Is that right? All students in the district.
Yeah, yes, the Safe School Climate,
Right.
yes.
I mean, is that, I guess I'm thinking that's somewhat similar or.
It is, that's why we actually pulled, it isn't identical at all because there's so much more in the climate survey that parents and students and staff have gotten. This really just hones in on, I think it's 10 questions, perhaps. We broke some out, so it could be a little longer, but it really does hone in just on bullying, including cyberbullying, where the climate focuses on a lot of other areas, including the social emotional pieces as well. So there's some of that ties in, but it isn't just about that.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Before we move on to committee reports. So I think we have at least a couple, several. Yes, Rebecca Harriman States, will you tell us about policy?
Sure. I have a short report. The policy committee met after a little hiatus during the budget season. We are working through the personnel policies. So Suzanne Duramo has been meeting with the committee to go through our existing policies, look at updates on new policies, and we should be having some policies come before the board fairly soon.
Thank you. And then Mr. Voros, CNI.
Yes, yeah, CNI, you'll be hearing from Jean Hall this evening on pre-calculus and college math topics. So I won't belabor you with that. I will call your attention in the minutes that you've received to the SELKA update that Ann gave us and the ELL update that Frank also presented us in your minute notes. And then Ann gave us the kindergarten registration procedure, which is now going to be a recorded presentation for incoming kindergarten parents that will be posted on our website. And that concludes the committee curriculum instruction report. Thank you.
Thank you. And then did we have a communications committee meeting, or am I reading past?
Yes, we did. We met. It was a brief meeting and we just met to discuss the budget newsletter that we're targeting to go out the end of March, the beginning of April.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other committee reports? Liaison activities? Anybody wants to chime in on? So we'll move on to our high school student representative report. So Mr. Jerfy and Ms. Clore, do you have a report for the board?
Good evening, board members and Dr. Rodrigue. I'd like to start by talking about clubs, which are actually going great. With the new schedule, it's easier for a lot of clubs to meet online, which is what clubs like FBLA are doing, with last period being at home and all. Other clubs like the Nice Club have plans to meet in person. It all just really depends on what works best for the club members. Something else that has been great recently is the World Language Department's offering of the National AAPPL Biliteracy Test. And that's a test offered for students in Spanish or French 5 and Italian or Latin 4. and students who pass this test receive seals on their diplomas. For example, Jillian and I are both taking Spanish 5 this year, and we just took the speaking portion of the test this past Friday. This is an extremely exciting opportunity for those students who have been taking a language throughout their high school career. Overall, everyone I've talked to is very happy that things are getting back to normal, especially with the possibility of having regular senior events. And Jillian will speak more about that. That concludes my report.
I will continue. So, good evening, members of the Board of Ed and Superintendent Dr. Rodrigue. So I definitely agree with Rochelle. Now that we've almost had a whole month of the all or mostly in person, except for cohort D, I think the students are really enjoying that we get back to kind of the normal as it can be school schedule. Like I never thought I'd be grateful for going back to the rotating 8-day schedule, but I definitely like the variety more than the hybrid. So it's been that aspect I really appreciate, and also the fact that I think having the majority of your classmates in class with you is like a very important part to classes, to like keeping them going and keeping students engaged. So I definitely appreciate that most students, except for cohort D, is in class each day. Those are my two favorite standouts, I'd say, of the schedule. As far as congestion, like in the mornings or at the end of the day, in the morning, well, Rochelle and I are seniors, so we kind of come in toward the latter end of the morning bell, and when the lobby is not crowded at all. But I do have to go in early some days for link crew to check up on the freshmen, and I do see everyone going to their location and not kind of dwindling in the lobby like previous years. So the morning is good, and the afternoon, the students do have to go to the lobby to get their lunch, but other than that, most of us are just like in a rush to get out and get away from the lobby. And so it's definitely not bad. It's a couple seconds maybe to grab your lunch, but if you don't need a lunch, there are other doors to go out. The buses are leaving really early, so you don't have to stand in a bunch with the people on your bus. So it's been a very good transition. I'm really happy about it and the way we're able to move toward getting better. The teachers are also continuing to enforce every day the wiping down our desk. So each classroom has like a big white tub of wipes. And as you walk in, they're like, don't forget to get your wipe, and you wipe down your desk, which just makes the students feel better and the teachers feel better about germs from class to class. So as I mentioned, the free lunch program is still going on, and it is available for students that go to school every day, and remote students can pick it up earlier in the day, before 11 a.m. It couldn't be any more convenient for us. The lunch staff makes signs of what's available each day. There's usually 4 options. For example, on Friday, it was garden salad, chef salad, chicken Caesar wrap, and American combo. So there's 4 tables, each with signs, and you just literally just go up, grab your lunch and go. And each bag has like 2 snacks, fruit, chocolate milk, regular milk, juice. Like it's great. I don't think they can make it any better for the students. And I know kids are really enjoying it, because every day I see lots of kids rush and go and to see what they can get and open up their bags and see what's inside. It's also different every day, so it's a little surprise when you get home. Winter sports games and contests started last week, so they were practicing for a little time, but games officially started last week. So that goes for boys and girls basketball, gymnastics, hockey, and the boys swim and dive all had their first meets and games wrapped in the books. This is our first year. Hockey kicked off last Wednesday, and this is the first year that they are actually formed a co-op with the new Fairfield team, which co-ops are kind of common in the hockey. Like the girls do that, and there's already a Brookfield, Danbury, and Bethel co-op, so it's not uncommon to have in the field hockey, ice hockey sport. And so there's one as far as that goes, there's one captain from New Fairfield, one captain from Newtown, and then 3 assistant captains. And their home ice arena stayed the same, so they still have their games at Danbury Ice Arena. So not much for that has changed. Basketball both had their senior nights, and all of the other winter sports their senior nights will be coming in the next weeks. I talked to a lot of the athletes, and I think that they know that their seasons are shortened and SWCs and states might look a little different, but they're all very appreciative that they're having a season at all and that it is kicked off and going the way it is. So this year has brought a lot of new and different schedules as far as early dismissals, 90-minute delays, 2-hour delays, 3-hour delays, or like the Wednesdays leaving early. So I talked with some students and parents about ways that's easy for us to stay updated on the schedules and like what time our remote classes started. And I just wanted to share a couple of the ways that they responded. So one of the first ones was downloading the school messenger app and making sure that notifications are turned on. They responded that it's a great place. It keeps all of the school messages from Dr. Longabuco or Dr. Rodriguez's office in the same place, so it doesn't just get lost in your email. And all of the emails get sent there. So like the bullying survey, the free lunch sign up, the early dismissal notifications are all in one place, and notifications immediately get sent to your phone. Second, a popular way for students was Power School. So they have a new function. If you update the app, there's a schedule, which is constantly updated with our Newtown High School schedule. So it tells you exactly what time each period starts, what time the lunch period's over, what time you have to log back in, and it updates at the beginning of each week, but also if we have an early dismissal, it'll update as soon as the early dismissal is announced. So it's a great way to even like double check if you're worried about early dismissal or something like that. And then lastly, if you don't want to download either of those apps for whatever reason, most people already have Twitter on their phones, so you can just follow the Twitter page as usual, and they post the schedule for each week at the beginning of the week, or the athletic page, which also posts the sports cancellations and practices, if there were any more questions about that. So planning has begun for senior events, so it looks definitely a lot different this year. But an email was sent out to all senior students and parents about the possible events we could have if planning goes well and COVID doesn't interfere any more than it already has. There's definitely a couple changes, but they sent out another survey last week about senior prom. So we're all very hopeful since junior prom was canceled. But it looks like they're trying to move most of the events to the end of the year so that they can be outside and more students would be comfortable with attending. So the prom survey was just a simple one question asking if you were comfortable with going so they could see if students were still interested in the event, which I know I'm very interested, but it was just to get a larger number. I think that's all my new updates for this meeting. I just wanted to conclude that a lot of the students at school are very happy that things aren't completely back to normal, but every week it seems that we're getting like that much closer to having like in-person club meetings and more sports games, and it just is raising our hopes a little more than like hybrid and the all remote was. So I'm very grateful, and it seems like it's going well as long as we keep the same protocols and desk wiping and all of that going on. And looks like we'll have a good transition to spring sports and the senior events in the later end of the year. And that's all.
We certainly hope so. We're all looking forward to it. And it is a testament to all the good mitigation that's gone into place with the mask wearing and everybody being careful about how close they're getting together with each other. And so I will open it up to board member questions or comments. Yeah, Ms. Lideline.
I have a question about sports. I know that are all the sports teams able to compete right now? And this might be for Lori or for Jillian.
I know not all of them. So wrestling, dance, and cheerleading have started some smaller group practices, but they haven't started games yet. Those will still be later on in the next couple weeks.
Are they also not competing in competitions then? Is there a reason why? And I don't expect you to know this, Jillian, but maybe Lori might know if there's a reason
So we're
why?
following that was part of the guidelines at CIAC with those exact sports as Jillian mentioned. So they're able to do the skill building, the conditioning, and I know Dr. Longobuco, did you want to speak to any of that as well?
Sure. So that was a CIAC decision that went out for the whole state about those 3 particular activities. Wrestling is practicing in small groups in a conditioning format, and cheer and dance are practicing, and they are going to basketball games so that they have an experience to do something, but there are no competitions at this time for either of those sports. I know there's a lot of back and forth and petitions and things out there, including one all the way to the NFHS. And so I don't know if that will change, but there's some discussion about changing the leveling from the determination of high risk and moderate risk sports. And potentially if that changes, I don't know, maybe they would look to something for those 3 sports, but that would be a decision by the CIAC and their medical advisor board.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Herman Stites.
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly, as a mom of a student who is in one of those sports that isn't participating in normal competition this season, I just really appreciate everything that the coaches and the athletic director are doing to give those students at least some experience to build the team camaraderie and to condition as a team. I think that's really important. And so I know those kids really appreciate it because they have missed so much. And even just this little thing is great. So that effort is definitely seen and appreciated.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, sensing none, thank you for your high school reports. We appreciate hearing what's going on. And we'll move on to our, where are we, financial report. So we'll entertain a motion on that.
I move that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending January 31, 2021.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Mr. Kusan seconds the motion, and then we will turn it over to Ms. Vadas to give us the narrative on it.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. So I also included the COVID update. I was wondering if we could start with that. I did share this with the Board of Finance last Thursday, so I thought it would be important to share it with the Board of Education. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
part of the finances.
I'm sure.
Although, why don't we, can we wait and do that after we approve the financial report?
Sure. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to present the 7th report of the 2021 school year, where we continue to provide year-to-date expensive active encumbrances, anticipated obligations, and year-to-date transfers. Full year forecasting and account analysis will continue for unencumbered accounts, and these can be found in the anticipated obligations column. During the month of January, the Board of Education spent approximately $7.5 million, $4 million on salaries, and $2.2 million on benefits. This also included the 3rd quarter installment for a self-insurance fund for $2 million. And we also spent approximately $1.3 million on all other objects. The excess cost grant has been adjusted by the state, and it accounts for an additional $65,732. You won't see this until next month's report because the reports from the state have just come out. And the reimbursement rate came in at 83.54%, which is pretty high. We typically see it between 72 and 75%. With that being said, the grant will also be recalculated in March and is due to March 1st, and adjustments will be made at that time. So the $65,000 that we will see in next month's report could go down after we recalculate the grant. So let me put up, can I share the screen and put up the financial report? Okay. Let's see. I think it's this one. Are you seeing the financial report?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. You never tell what you're saying. Okay. So during the month of January, our ending balance has changed. Last month, we were at $136,982. And this month, we see a negative balance of $54,059. So the drivers of this change were found in salaries and supplies. So I'm just going to run through the detail of this report so you can see the changes. In the salary account, as Dr. Rodriguez had mentioned, we did account for 4 additional teaching positions. These are for secondary teachers. And we anticipated their start date to be March 1st. So they're prorated at $93,000. And you'll see that in the teacher salary accounts. And we had some other certified changes that account for about $32,000. We filled the ELL position that was also mentioned earlier. So that changed our encumbrance by $32,000. And our para-union, we filled 6 positions. So the total on that change in that account was $44,000. So in the para-union, we have about 10 to 12 positions, I believe, left open. We made, I'm going to use my pen here. We did make an adjustment in this column right here for about $17,000. So that includes some open positions that we are anticipating if we were to fill them, say, in March, but it also includes some recalculations to our encumbrances, which we typically do around this time of year for the para-union. So that's why you see an adjustment for $17,000. But again, we're going to revisit the para-union and all the other unions next month as we go through and rebalance all our encumbrances. In employee benefits, there wasn't much of a change. You can see that balance went down a little bit to $28,000, $28,460, and that's just to be in line with the current conditions for their unemployment. In professional services, purchase property services, and other purchase services, we had very minimal balance changes for the month. So I'm going to move on to other purchase services. I would like to, I already pointed out that the special education, you'll notice that balance will change next month where we're going to include the $65,000. So that balance here will go up by an additional 65. So also included in our contracted services is our lunch program. And I'm glad to hear that it's going really well. That's good news, but I just wanted to let you know that our meal counts are still down quite a bit. I did include some anticipation for the full year here. You'll see the obligated balance for $249,000 with a projected outcome of a negative 236. But just to let you know that even at the high school, the meal sounds like the program is working very well, but we're still down 73% in participation. Elementary schools were down about 41%. Due to the schedule, I don't think there's any changing that right now. So in our supply accounts, you'll see that we made an adjustment here in our plant supplies. And that balance went down overall by $24,000. We still have to do some work in our virtual net metering. You do see a savings of $300,000. The bills were coming in quite nicely over the last couple of months, and I'm not sure what happened, but Eversource is taking a little break. We're going to take a look at that next month, and hopefully we'll have all the components so we can recalculate that electricity. And I do believe the balance will go up in that account. Minimal changes in our property and equipment, $5,800. And as well as miscellaneous and the special ed contingency is still there for $100,000. So in the month, there were no emergency repairs. And we had $1,000 in tuition under our revenue. And that's all I have to report for the financials for this month. So do you have any questions about this report before I move on to the COVID expenditures?
Let's see, can I just ask it? In some ways, I look at this as we're actually down by 100 and let's see, we're projecting, what is the end year projection?
It's $54,000 right here.
a loss of, or in the
Yes.
54,000. So I would argue that part of that I mean, the $100,000 in the special ed contingency account,
Mhm.
that is not meant to be used in other ways other than special education costs. And right now the special education costs, we seem to be doing okay. Is that right?
That's correct. So let me see if I can go back to that. So we currently have a balance of 62,000 in the positive in special education, which is pretty rare for this time of year, although it's a very different year. So yeah, when you add the two together, our balance for special education is actually $162,000. And, you know, I call that one of my wild card accounts because that could change out of, you know, any given moment. If we had 2 out placements, we could eat up that whole balance.
So I guess my point is though that we shouldn't count on that $100,000 for any other purpose other than special education, because that's really what that was meant for. And I understand, I mean, the excess cost grant coming in at, what was it, 83%?
Yeah, 83.5.
Is that because there are fewer districts applying for those monies based on transportation not being as high as?
Yeah, it's all sorts of reasons. It could be, you know, it's just the way that the state has been allocating it, and it's based on all the districts within the state.
Right.
Yeah.
And many are not using their transportation or tuition as much as they would have in a normal year.
That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments before Ms. Bettis moves on?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. D'Elia.
Tanya, I just want to piggyback on what Dr. Koo was saying. It doesn't look like that contingency plays a role in the projected balance. Am I correct?
And the project, well, it hasn't been applied yet, so it is in the balance.
So that's in that, so is that
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
negative 54,000?
Yes, it is. See right here how it's anticipated. So I already have it earmarked as it's going to be used, almost like it's
Oh,
covered. So it is
thank you.
included in that.
All right, thank you. I thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Dr. Koo.
This
That was a good
entire
question.
column, everything that's in the anticipated obligations column is anything that's not encumbered that we just anticipate using.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay, we can move on to COVID expenses.
All right. So again, like I was saying, this was presented to the Board of Finance last Thursday. I think it was received somewhat well. So this is similar to the report that you've seen before. It's a little bit more condensed. It doesn't have as many columns. I made it a little bit simpler to read. So we have all our categories of different expenses, and we have additional nursing hours, increased para hours, custodial overtime for the additional cleaning, and our teacher coverage, which includes our long-term and short-term subs. It also includes that the teachers that we anticipate hiring, the 4 new teachers. So all of our people costs total just over $541,000. In our other student-related costs, we have things such as the bus monitors that were hired earlier in the year. We have special education, student services, and we have some committee work, and that totals $158,000. Under our PPE accounts, we have things such as desk shields, protective gear, furniture fixtures, air purification, disinfectant, and sanitizers, and that totals just over $560,000. Our technology devices, as we're all aware, are all of our Chromebooks that were rolled out. Under other technology, we have things such as cameras, microphones. We had to increase our bandwidth, and we also have some Chromebook cases. And I thought it was important to include the school lunch program. We wouldn't have been in this position if it weren't for this COVID pandemic. So that's $247,000, which you saw in the financial statement. And then the miscellaneous school supplies or anything that the school has ordered. This could be things such as plastic packets and bins, lanyards, clipboards, swivel stands, just all kinds of miscellaneous items that they've purchased. So our total COVID-related expenses are currently at just over $2.4 million. Our revenue offsets, we have the Corona Relief Grant. As you know, that was $380,842. We transferred money to the town's capital non-recurring fund for $400,000. And we also had a portion of the municipal Corona Relief Grant for $165,000. All of our revenue offsets total $945,842. So this area here are savings that are currently within the budget. Some of these you've seen already. In transportation, we do have quite a balance right now. These are areas also that I do feel somewhat confident about. It's still early in the year. I want to put that out as a warning. But in our transportation, this is also combined with fuel. I'm seeing about a $50,000 savings in fuel. Transportation, we had the $145,000 carryover. We had a fewer less students that are traveling out of district. We also had some savings in our summer program, and a little additional grant was applied to this line item. We anticipate seeing a savings in student and staff travel for $50,000. Our non-certified salary accounts, as you saw, do have quite a high balance right now. I'm anticipating at least 100 in the paras, and then with all the other non-certified salary accounts, we feel that $90,000 would be an addition to the para union. Summer school and activity salaries, these were salaries or costs that we had saved due to summer school, and some activity accounts that have been lowered, and professional development for $40,000. So you can see our net total expenditures come to $848,490. An additional potential offsets, in here I've included the virtual net metering. That totals the majority of that, but part of that is a carryover credit. So $125,000 is a carryover from the virtual net metering, and an additional $225,000. So that equals $350 for virtual net metering, and then a little bit additional in PD and some fuel. So this line item right here is important to mention, but I also want to talk about it with some caution. So all of these COVID expenses, the entire $848,000 less the savings that we're seeing right now, are being carried throughout our budget. And the $400,000 is really just an offset that's also carrying these COVID balances. But these are areas that are where budgets haven't been fully expended, or like we saw the special education contingency. So they're not really areas that are savings or can be touched, but right now they're carrying the COVID expenses. So I think it was also important for the Board of Finance to see this, that the costs are embedded within our budget, but these are balances that just you cannot anticipate that coming to fruition. And that's why we're popping out at a negative $54,000 right now. So this ties right into our financial statement.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so do we have any questions about this? And I know we typically go over this in our CFF meeting, which we did not have this month because we had a heavy agenda that night. So.
Anya, can we also just add, for those that weren't at the Board of Finance, that they did ask for us to send them an update in, I think we said early April, as to where we are at that point in time.
Yeah, and right now I feel that we're okay. You know, there's going to be some changes in the February statement, as with the additional revenue from the state. So I feel like we're okay now. People are still spending their budgets. And again, in the anticipated obligation column, I do have a lot of the like instructional supplies and other expense accounts fully expended. So, you know, I'm just capturing those costs in that column so we don't fall short. So, any questions?
How about Ms. Zukowski and then Mr. D'Elia?
Now, if we fall a little short, we do have something in our non-lapsing account to be able to address it. Is that right?
Yeah, we currently have a balance of $270,000. Part of that's been earmarked for special education. $63,000. Dan, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with
Oh,
what
okay.
you're saying. I'm disagreeing with a thought process. So
So, I mean, push come to shove, yeah, we could use that. That's all we have in our non-lapsing.
Well, we're not allowed to use the special ed, so we wouldn't want to touch the special ed, I would think. But if for some reason we came just 50,000 short, I mean, we've got a little tiny bit of a buffer there.
Early, so I feel like we just need to, kind of sit tight. It's a very unusual year. I've never seen anything like this. So I think we're okay for now. Let's see what February and March produce, and then I think we can reevaluate it at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I want to make that same point again, that $100,000 contingency for special education, I wouldn't consider to be something that we could use to fill in for, I don't know, food services or something else.
Correct. And I also, just to point out again, that's captured in this other various balances. And that's why I have a little warning down here that these are the balances that are carrying the COVID expenses, but they really shouldn't be used to offset the COVID expenses.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Delia, did you?
Yes, I have two questions. Tanya, what is there any way that the school lunch program number will improve, in your opinion?
Well, that's hard to say. I mean, it's, every month has been different. November was a hybrid. December was remote. January, we're all in. So it's kind of, all over the map. In January, the cost to the district was $30,000. And I'm just trying to now, evaluate meal counts, see where we're at, and use a projection that I've put together, and also our district manager, what he's put together. So I'm working with him to try to figure out, what the remainder of the year is. So right now, that 247 includes the year going as it has been in January. So all in, as we are now. So I'm sorry, Dan, I don't have an exact answer if it will improve or not.
It sounds like it's a moving target, right?
And isn't the fact that our middle school and high school students are not eating lunch in the schools contributes to, I mean, even though we are all in, that continues to be an issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like from the report that it's going well. It is a grab and go style, but we don't have the a la carte sales. We don't have, the participation because it's a non-congregate meal. We're just not eating together.
All right. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Delia.
Tanya, and maybe this is for Dr. Rodriguez. Are people not able to buy what they need because we're trying to maintain this balance? In other words, are we, because I just want to make sure that all the needs are met and that we're not holding back because of this.
We have not frozen the budget at all this year, not at all. So
Thank you
yes,
very
they
much.
are able to buy whatever they need.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before we approve the financial report? All right. Sensing none, all those in favor? Aye. And Mr. Bull?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, that means we are all in favor, and that's unanimous, and the financial report has been approved. And I know, Mr. Hall, we talked about moving this up on the agenda, and I feel like it was sort of a fake out because it still has taken us a long time to get to this point in the agenda. But that brings us to our first read on math topics curriculum and the pre-calculus curriculum. And thank you, Mr. Hall and Dr. Longabuco, for being here to share this curricula with us. And I will let you take it away from here.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Board members and Dr. Rodriguez and my friends. I trust you can see what I'm sharing. I can only see your faces. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be discussing pre-calculus and college math topics curriculums. So first off, the pre-calculus curriculum was written in June of 2019 by Charlotte, Chris, and Sean Tierney. The process to getting to where we are now was a lot of feedback and adjustment from a multitude of groups within also my own department. Charlotte and I spent a good probably 6-7 hours just in the last week, just trying to see if we can clean up these two curriculums to bring them to really the level that we're striving for across all of our curriculums for the math department. What we're talking about tonight is the two orange at the top. We have CPA pre-calculus and honors pre-calculus, 4 sections and 3 sections of those two. I'll do that one first. And then we'll come back and discuss our college math topics. At the CPA level, there's a CPB level course called Intermediate Algebra. Those two are the same. And then I just wanted to show the other senior courses that we have along these lines here. AP Stats I discussed last spring. AP Computer Science I'll discuss probably sometime next year. We have a third section of a third type of pre-calculus, pre-calculus BC. That's pre-calculus and calculus 1 put together. Again, that's another curriculum that I'll talk about in the future. Obviously, there's a calculus beyond the pre-calculus, but I just wanted to show you the courses that kids can take after taking our 3 core courses of algebra 1 and 2, and geometry. First section for pre-calculus is trigonometry. Unit circle, real important stuff, and to me, really, really pretty. It brings together geometry and pre-calculus together. And then we look at the SOHCAHTOA, creating the triangles, the right triangles in those relationships. And then finally, we'll do some graphing. That's the graph of sine curve going off forever. And then we go back and look at trigonometry backwards, looking at inverse trig. So as opposed to starting with an angle and giving that ratio of the two sides, you're given a side length and you're trying to figure out what the angle is. And then probably the funnest thing to teach in trigonometry, the trig identities, because it's just, it's algebra and trigonometry coming together using your algebra skills. And then finally, trig equations, and that's just, again, algebra and trigonometry coming together and just finding the angles that make those trig equations true. Then we move on to sequences and series, which is a baby step to calculus. Sequences with different types. We have arithmetic, which is you're adding a common difference, or geometric, you're multiplying each term by a common ratio. We have the explicit formulas at the top, and also the recursive formulas, which is you need to know some previous information to get the new terms. And then series is just adding up your terms in a sequence. So it's just a fancy way of saying sum. We have the sum formulas for arithmetic and also the sum formulas for a geometric series. Then we move on to graphing of polynomials and rational functions. Polynomials are your traditional algebraic functions put together. Here we have some intercepts and also some mins and max and turning points. And then rational functions, they're real famous for having asymptotes, whether vertical or horizontal, and the behavior associated with each of those. Then we look at polynomials, polynomial inequalities and rational inequalities. And that's really just looking at when the curves are positive and negative, and what are the corresponding intervals that make those true. Again, looking at rational inequalities just makes it a little more interesting because you have asymptotes to consider along the way. And then we're looking at exponential and logarithmic functions. Those two functions are inverses of each other. And we're looking at graphing those two, as well as solving log and exponential equations. And then conic sections. Conics are looking at the different type of curves that you can get by taking slices of a cone. Circle is the most basic one, and then parabolas are an extension of that, and ellipses and hyperbolas, and as well as writing them in algebraic form, which again ties together the visual as well as an algebraic representation of those curves. And then polar curves. Polars is on your right is a rectangular, which is you have left and right and up and down. Polar curves is you have a rotational kind of feel to it. You have angles and the corresponding radii. And then we have the polar curves, which gives you a little different feel than from the polynomials and rationals. As you can see there, we can make some different looking curves, which are prettier looking in a math kind of way. And the final topic for pre-calculus is limits. Limits is your foundations for derivatives in calculus, where we evaluate some limits, some left and right hand limits, and as well as continuity. Continuity is looking at when a curve is continuous, or meaning when do you need to pick up your pencil to continue the curve? It would not be continuous. Those are examples down there of some classic discontinuities. College math topics, again, written by Kelly Murphy, Sean Tierney, and Kathy Bremer. The two levels we have are CPA, college math topics, and CPB intermediate. This is a fourth year for students after they complete our three core courses of Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. To me, this course is really keeping the kids in the game who aren't ready for pre-calculus and don't feel statistics would be beneficial to them. It keeps their skills sharp so that when they go off to college, they take their placement test and hopefully they're not placing into a non-credit math course, which is something we want to keep kids from doing. So therefore, it's really just keeping their skills sharp their last year at high school. Again, we're talking about the green section here. So these are kids that have already completed our core courses. And again, we have two different levels and we have 6 sections of courses across these 2 courses. Excuse me. We'll start off with just the basics, foundations of functions, looking at relations, ordered pairs, and whether something is considered a function or not. And then we just graph some lines real quick, just a review of topics in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, just looking at the slope and intercept of our lines. Then we move on to solving equations and simplifying some expressions. And then finally, we're looking at some inequalities. What make these what are all the x values that make this inequality that we have there greater than or equal to, and all the other inequality symbols. Then we move on to systems of equations. That's looking at graphical, meaning having 2 lines at the same time, and do they intersect, and how many times do they intersect? As you can notice in the first graph there, they intersect once. The next 2, they're parallel lines, so therefore they don't intersect at all. And finally, there are 2 graphs on the last one drawn on top of each other, so there's an infinite number of solutions. So we look at it graphically on how 2 equations interact, and as well as algebraically. That's just using substitution method to solve that system. And then we look at graphing 2 inequalities at the same time. You want to find what is the region that satisfies both the inequalities, and that would be the region over to the right, that darker purple. Then we move on to quadratics and graphing quadratics. Looking at the key components of it, the intercepts, as well as the vertex and the axis of symmetry. And then we discuss factoring in order to find the roots of a quadratic, here using the zero product property. We next move on to simplifying radicals, as well as the quadratic formula, the famous formula, used a lot in algebra. Then we move on to polynomial equations. We start off with just a review of scientific notation and properties of exponents. And then we move on to some long division, dividing 2 polynomials, not in numerical sense, and as well as factoring polynomials using the skills that they learn in quadratics, extending it to polynomials and using that same concepts. Then we move on to rational equations and expressions. Expressions are just simplifying fractional algebraic expressions. And then the equations are just solving an equation where there's a rational equation where there's an equal sign in the middle and finding the x value that makes it true. Finally, we look at simplifying radicals. Here we're looking at the 16 to the 3/4 power, using the rules for radicals and simplifying that, and then solving radical equations. Okay, that concludes my presentation of pre-calculus and college math topics. Here are all my friends last March. So this was pre-COVID. This is all of us on Pi Day and our beautiful Pi Day shirts. Thank you. I'm done. Any questions?
All right, thank you. The grand tour. Anybody have questions or comments? You overwhelmed us. Ms. Zukowski.
So my understanding is when you're doing a design of curriculum that you run trials of some of the concepts first. Is that proper understanding?
I mean, these courses have been offered, pre-calculus has been offered probably forever. College Math Topics is a newer course. It's probably about 4 years old. And we wrote the curriculum about 2 years ago.
Okay, so the question I have then, if there's information, is what are the metrics you have to see if this curriculum is advantageous to the students? It sets them up for more success than they would have had if they had stayed with the old curriculum.
I'm not sure what you mean by the old curriculum, because the College Math Topics is a relatively new course, and obviously pre-calculus has been around for a number of years.
Right. So then it would be, how do you know that this redo of the curriculum was beneficial, that it put the students in a better position?
Oh, so I mean, to me, this concept-based curriculum is really a process, and is making the math department think a little deeper about what we're doing, and see if we can come up with ways to get across the idea of not so much skills, but really, to talking about the concepts that we're trying to discuss here, and a little broader, a little more holistic picture of the curriculums that we're working with.
Can additionally, I mean, I don't know the history of the college math topics. That is the way that course in particular is improving our high school students' careers, is that it is keeping them engaged in math for an additional year. Am I reading
correct?
that
Yeah.
right?
So there's to me, there's two parts. So one part is having our seniors prepared to when they go off to college. Again, we want them taking a credit course and not a non-credit course. The other part is the ideas of 9 credits of STEM. I believe our current sophomores need 9 credits of STEM, so we want to give all of our populations a number of different options so that they can meet that criteria. So essentially, that we give an opportunity. Hey, we have 4 solid years of math that we can offer to you to get you towards that 9. Obviously, we have a couple other courses that you can take as well to get you to 5 credits. But to me, regardless of a student's ability, we have 4 credits for everybody to take just in the math department alone.
Right, I can jump in on that for a minute. Jean is absolutely right, but even as recent as 3 or 4 years ago, we did have a select group of students who would not take a 4th year of math, and part of the reason for establishing both the intermediate algebra, which we did mess around with a little bit from a half-year course to a full-year course and figuring out what students needed. And we ultimately landed on the 2 levels, CPA and CPB, of both college math topics and intermediate algebra, so that we guarantee that all of our math learners, regardless of level, can take 4 years of math and be successful. And that leads into what Jean is talking about. No matter what your programming is going to be post-high school, you probably have to take at the very least a college algebra class upon entry, even to some trade schools. So we feel strongly that now we have students who are prepared to go on to a variety of post-high school plans because of this course in combination with the intermediate algebra course.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? All right, Ms. Zukowski?
This may be a little off topic, but I just a general question. There's the concept of reasoning, which is, so this is sort of like more of the calculations, but within math, there's a concept of reasoning, logic puzzles, and stuff like that, probabilities, some basic understanding of the fundamentals of statistics without taking a statistics. Do our students get introduced to the concept of logic as well as the more standard math curriculum?
Logic is built into our geometry course. Statistics is built into our algebra 2. That is reflective of the redesign of the SAT. There's a 10% of the SAT is based on other, and within that 10%, there's probably 5% that is statistics based. So we move that down into algebra 2. So our algebra 2 students get a taste of what statistics is prior to taking the full year course that we offer. Again, statistics, we have probably 6-7 sections of statistics. And then obviously geometry, we have, 15 sections where the kids are getting exposed to the foundations of logic.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Ms. Herman Stites, did you have a question and I missed it or no? No. All right, any other questions? All right, so if there are any questions that come up between now and our next meeting when we would approve both of these curricula, if you can forward those on to Ms. Verdi so that she can forward them to the right place or answer them herself. And we'll get back to this at our next meeting. Thank you so much for sticking with us this evening and sharing the curricula.
Thank you,
No
Jim.
problem. Thanks a lot for having me. I'll see you all at the next meeting in 2 weeks when we finally approve it. Thank you.
Did Mr. Voros, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to thank Jean again.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, John. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. You too. All right, so that'll bring us to our old business and our COVID-19 update. So Dr. Rodriguez, do you have an update?
Yeah, well, I shared a little bit of what I wanted to say, but again, I was on, as I mentioned earlier, with the DPH as we have our weekly meetings. And, the main theme that they keep emphasizing is for schools to open safely and sustain being open is really the mitigation strategies. And I think we're doing a really great job in that department. And that's not just staff, but it's staff, it's leaders, and it's the community. So I really need to thank everyone for that because that helps a great deal. And contact tracing, I know that when we returned and we were in full, I know that was very difficult at the 7 through 12 level just because of the number of classes and the movement. But Dr. Longabuco, Mr. Einhorn, and definitely Ann Dalton and the nursing staff have really done a great job in that area, and that really helps all of us. So the other piece I think that's really important is that the Ed Advance report we just received, and again, we get weekly reports by Ed Advance, and that's all the data from the state, shows us completely out of the red in Newtown. We are at 3%. We are in the gold and the yellow, as I call the two colors. The first indicator being cases in general in a rolling average of 100,000 population over a 14-day period. And the second indicator is the number of cases versus those tested, so the positivity rate. And so we are completely out of the red, which is a good thing at 3%. So it's a definite, the secondary indicator is really about a trend going downward. And so that's, truly where we are. It is on the dashboard again. Please, utilize the dashboard. I've communicated that to parents and to staff so that you can see, rather than every time there's a case, we send a letter. I send a communication regularly, but not every letter now, every time there's a case in quarantining, because it is now right there. Once we've done the contact tracing, it goes up on the dashboard. So community members, parents, everyone gets to see that and stays abreast of where we are. Other than that, I think we're doing a great job, and I know that's a lot on. There was a high level of anticipation coming back in full for secondary, but I think everyone's doing their due diligence, and we're in. And as you can hear from the students, going well. Sports is in, and again, this I just hope we sustain this for the rest of the year. I really do, because I really feel truly that students need to be in school, and that they're happier there, they're more engaged, and it's good for the entire community. So thanks to the students too. Their compliance from the beginning of the year, I have to, a big shout out to our students, fact, I had a substitute teacher, just a quick story, stop in at central office last week. And I just asked how it was going. And he immediately wanted to talk about what great kids we have. And I asked him, well, what do you mean by that? Because we think they're great, but I'm curious about why you think they're great. And he said, just in their compliance with their masks, and he's never had to talk to anyone about, appropriate use of masks and washing hands. And I just thought that was really something to be celebrated, because it's really everyone working together, including our students. And so.
All right.
And that's all I have.
Any questions from anybody? It's sort of a wide open topic, isn't it? COVID update. Yes, Ms. Zukowski?
I'd like to follow up again on my earlier question. First, Jillian, thank you so much for talking about the congestion inside the building, because all of those students coming flowing into one confined space is concerning. But I'd like to now go outside. So the Newtown Middle School PTA meeting that I had gone to, there was a lot of conversation about traffic, because you've got so many students that don't necessarily want to ride the bus, or at least didn't way back when we first went full in person, that there were a lot of families driving their students in, and especially the Newtown Middle School was exceptionally congested. And I'm just curious, is that getting better at this point? Have we been able to do something to ensure the traffic flow is improving?
Well, it's, I just spoke to actually Mr. Einhorn. If we're focused on the middle school, I think high school has has always had issues with traffic, and I don't know, days are better than others, but the middle school has improved. Again, part of it was that anticipation of coming back and riding the bus, and I think that's subsided a great deal. It's quiet. I think more students are riding the buses. So they have had not many issues with traffic. There will always be traffic at both of the secondary schools, as you can imagine, but it goes much smoother at the middle school now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Clark.
I just wanted to say one thing. I know you were leaning toward the middle school, but for the high school, I know Dr. Roach opened up the bus lane for parents dropping off their students. So there's 2 lanes open now to kind of separate and get traffic moving at the high school, at least.
Thank you so much.
Great.
All right, any other comments or questions? No. I just want to thank Dr. Rodrigue for bringing us through I know there was a lot of trepidation in the community, and a lot of parents wanting their students back in school full in, and all that converging at the same time. And I just want to thank Dr. Rodrigue for being a leader among leaders, because Connecticut has really been a leader in terms of getting more of our students in-person learning. But also, Dr. Rodrigue, you've been a leader in terms of making sure that our district is on a consistent plan, not bouncing in and out of school, depending on who's in or out. But it's been successful, and I know we're not out of the woods yet, and I know there's a lot of mitigation. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. There's still a long way to go yet, but I do want to thank you for bringing us through sort of a rough spot in terms of COVID mitigation and getting our students in school. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. Takes a team, so I have a great team as well.
All right, so moving on, we'll move to new business. And that brings us to the Newtown High School March 19th schedule and March 24th school-wide SAT schedule.
So I've already spoken, well, I've actually sent communication out on March 19th, and really all parents know that March 19th is also a early release for the high school, although they don't have a conference on that day. They will release so that it aligns with all the other releases that day for conferences. But I will have Dr. Longobuco speak to the SAT, the school-wide SAT, and some of the adjustments that need to be made as a result.
Sure, thank you. So just briefly about the second conference day, like Dr. Rodriguez mentioned, it's not really a change for us as much as we are going to be following our Wednesday release schedule. So instead of a 12:30 dismissal and one remote class, we'll dismiss at 11:30 and take 2 remote classes. So the high school will still be on a full day on that Friday, March 19th, which is the second day of conferences, K-8. And that allows our students to ride the buses home with the middle schoolers and not conflict with any K-6 3-hour early release for their conferences. Wednesday, March 24th is a little more tricky. That is our school-wide SAT day for our juniors. And what that means is kind of twofold. There's 2 sort of conflicts happening to make that day work. One is that we'll need our 9th, 10th, and 12th graders to be home, because based on the College Board recommendations, we can only test between 12 and 14 people in a room, which means we need all of our rooms at the high school in order to test approximately 370 juniors. So the first part of the process is that our other 3 grades would be home and learning remotely that day versus being in school. And the second part is by utilizing every classroom and having such small testing rooms, we also need a whole lot more proctors than we typically would, which means I need to utilize my whole staff to be proctors in the classrooms, which ultimately brings us to the final goal of needing approval to do an asynchronous day for our 9th, 10th, and 12th graders that day, which means our teachers would post their assignments before 8 a.m. and they would have to be completed by 3 p.m. in order to get attendance for the day. And that's simply because the logistics behind them being able to teach live while they're proctoring in an SAT classroom is just unmanageable. And so we do have a good schedule and a plan for this. We did test the PSATs and the SATs in the fall. And I'll just briefly remind you why this was not an issue in the fall is because both fell on Wednesdays and we were fully remote on Wednesdays in our hybrid schedule. And so the reason why this is coming up now is because our students go to school all 5 days, which kind of puts us in this unique circumstance. We did talk to transportation today about when they would be able to go home, because that's another level of complexity in this, because the SAT ends around 12, but we can't dismiss at 12:30 on a Wednesday because K-6 dismisses 12:30 on a Wednesday. And so we will be dismissing at 1:30, which is actually after the extended time students, and students can either leave when they're done, should they drive themselves or have their own ride, or they can wait for a bus, which would be able to pick them up later on for a ride home at 1:30. And we would just simply allow them to eat their grab and go lunches monitored by us in our 2 cafeteria spaces on those days to make sure that they could eat and then travel home as needed. So that's the quick version of the planning that needs to go into Wednesday, the 24th, in order to make sure our juniors can test the SATs.
Okay, so I must admit, did we have a motion for this? Do we need?
I think we put it down more as an informational rather than approval, simply because there is no alternative here. It is it's part of what has to occur if with our all-day all-in SAT for our juniors. So
Okay. No, I was asking purely because I had not looked at the motions and I didn't know whether that. So, are there any questions or comments? Everybody's fine. Ms. Zukowski?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So at 12:30, all of the juniors who are not extended test taking time will then all just simply go to one of the 2 cafeterias and have a nice hour-long lunch in the cafeteria. Is that the intent?
No, not entirely. That would only be if they cannot go home. Many of our juniors either drive themselves or they have rides. So I would guess about 80% will find themselves a way home at 12:30, and we'll be dealing with a much smaller amount to stay to go home on the buses.
Okay, I'm just curious in the case that it's not quite that wonderful. Are two cafeterias to be safely socially distanced? How much of 1/4 of the population can they, I mean, you basically, the juniors are just 1/4 of the population, right? So how much of that population can actually be accommodated by the cafeteria?
If we needed to do a full grade in 2 of the cafeterias, we could do so with 100% students, which it will not be.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, any other questions or comments? Before we move on. Sensing none, we'll move on to, thank you for that explanation and bringing us up to date on that. So we'll move on to public participation at this point, and I will open up to anybody who's on the phone who wants to press *6 and unmute themselves to address the board at this time. All right, I'm sensing no public participation, so I will close out public participation, and that'll bring us to our last item on the agenda, which is adjournment. Anybody want to make a motion?
I
I
move that
make a
we
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
All right, so
Second.
Mr. Cruson makes the motion, Mr. Burrow seconds. All those in favor? All right,
Aye.
we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.